let's talk about leadership. We're fortunate enough to have one of the leaders in Silicon Valley with us. I think one area that you've been quite passionate about in the past is women in technology. You know, I'm an engineer myself by background, and there are not nearly enough women in engineering and technology, computer science, I think you'd agree, certainly in the upper echelons of Silicon Valley. What's the problem? Is it a supply problem or a demand problem? Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this?
Well, my view overall is that it is a supply problem, but it's a different supply problem than a lot of people think.
Okay.
Just in general, I don't think we're producing enough computer scientists and enough technologists. Right? I mean, I think we're in a state
of
where...
either gender.
Of either gender. And so I think that, you know, having just recently been in China, you know, China graduates as many engineers every year from universities as we have in the workforce in the US. Right, so I mean, I think they graduate about 1 million engineers a year, and we have about 1 million engineers in the US. So we need there to be a lot more technical people overall.
But there have been, before people get too caught up with the China's going to beat us on everything, studies have challenged the quality of engineers. Not every engineering school is comparable, but you know, broadly speaking, your point is certainly valid. There are other countries, Germany would be one of them, China, India, that place more emphasis on science and technology education. Will that be enough to solve the problem? Is there a glass ceiling, for example?
Well, I don't think there's a glass ceiling, but just to go a little bit further, more specifically on computer science, there are lots of people who are interested in sciences and math who don't pursue computer science. So the statistics look something like this. If you look at advanced placement courses across the US, each year about 200,000 seniors take the advanced placement calculus test. About 14,000 seniors take the advanced placement computer science test. And so if you assume that most people who are good at math might also be interested in computers, the question is, why are only 7% of those that are really advanced in math pursuing computer science? And we need to work to actually grow that overall pie, right? We should get to a state where there's 200,000 graduating seniors taking that advanced placement test. And they've also done studies on companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter and other companies that show that early exposure to computer science before you actually get to college is something that a lot of professional computer scientists ultimately have. Something like 95 to 98% of the software engineers at these companies have had at least done some coding by the time they graduate from school. So we need to get focused on that. And I do think making sure that that is palatable to girls in high school and make sure that there's not stigmas around it. I think that that comes from, one, people seeing how technology plays in their life every day, a multiplicity of role models, not even one role model, but just saying like, hey, there's all kinds of successful women in technology, and one's a jock and one is interested in the arts, and and like that you don't have to necessarily give up your personal interests. I think a lot of people think about the the pocket protecting, pasty blue glasses, look in front of a computer up all night and say, oh, is that what I'm getting into if I get into computer science? And I think that's not true, and that's something we need to fight against. That said, I think we're finally starting to turn some of the tide here. Just last week, Stanford came out with their statistic that that computer science is now the biggest major. So for years it was economics or it was psychology, and so computer science as of this spring is the largest major at Stanford, which I think is a great sign. But my strategy would be to grow the pie overall, right? If we produce more computer scientists, if we produce more engineers.
And including people who are skilled in verbal skills, right? That's also another fallacy that only math geniuses should do this.
Yeah.
Where studies show people actually need good verbal skills to be good programmers.
The studies do show that, for example, programming ability, yes, there are some elements that are quantitative and mathematical, so some amount of math background helps, but what distinguishes good programmers from great programmers is verbal ability. It actually correlates much more highly to verbal SAT scores than it does to mathematical SAT scores.